Okay, good afternoon, friends. So we are finally onto the last class of this session, our second series as such. So initially we rushed through, of course, because of the extra classes that have been allotted in the second series. We have been going a bit slow and covering the uncovered leftover part of the topics of this crop production, which is an elective under your fifth SEP. See, in today's class, of course, yesterday we discussed about the fruit crops. We tried to learn about the mango and citrus fruits, etc. Today, we learn about plantation crops. They are otherwise called plantation crops. And in today's class, we'll discuss about cashew nut and the coconut. Now, first of all, let us start our lecture with cashew nut. As you know, cashew nut is well known and everybody likes it. They are very tasty, cashew nuts, and of course a bit costly. And when they are roasted and salted, they give good smell, good flavor, good taste, and because of rich in fats, carbohydrates, and also important vitamins and minerals, they form rather a complete food as such. So if you take a fistful of cashew nuts, you can beat your hunger for 2 or 3 hours because they are very rich in nutrients. Now coming to this cashew nut, its scientific name is Anacardium occidentale, a member of Anacardiaceae, and generally it doesn't belong to India, and its history is very short as such. It was introduced to India in 16th century, more particularly in 1560 or so by Portuguese. Now, who were ruling the Goa, and they were the people for the introduction of this new crop into India. And because of the congenial environment available in Western coast, it was introduced in 1560s. Later on, within a couple of years, it was it gained prominence even in East Coast. Now, East and West Coast, both of them, they compete with each other in the production. And of course, Kerala ranks first as far as the number of industries based on the processing of this cashew nut are concerned. Even we have, large scale plantations of these cashew nuts in Kerala, and is followed by Karnataka and Maharashtra, Goa on the west, even up to what we say, even Gujarat. And on the east coast, generally, whenever we speak of cashew nut, the coastal Andhra comes to our mind, starting from Srikakulam to the tip of the coast, that is Nellore. So Srikakulam, Vijayanagaram, Visakhapatnam, east, west Godavaris, even Guntur and Nellore and Prakasham. These are the areas where the cultivation of this cashew nut is taken on larger areas. And because the returns are well, farmer gets good returns because they are most sought after, and the prices are stable as such, very costly thing. And you are aware, even 500 grams will cost you more than 500 or so. So 1,000 rupees a kg, very costly affair. So and even raising of this is not that difficult. Even pests are not troublesome when compared to other orchards. And even if you raise them, or it takes after either plantation or when you put the seed into a pit or otherwise, it comes up it comes for harvest, or it fruiting, flowering and fruiting starts in the, at the end of the third year. But of course, full maturity of the plant reaches only after 6 or 7 years, then you get good returns. So now, coming to the, place of origin, generally it belongs to South America, more particularly Brazil. Brazil is considered as the place of origin of this crop. Even people like Vabilo also confirmed this. And there is a uniformity among the leading agriculturists and the other scientists that South America is the place from where this got originated. But of course, now it has spread to more than 30 countries. Of course, now actively involved in the cultivation of the cashew nut. To name a few, India, Tanzania, Mozambique, Kenya, Brazil, even Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Nigeria, Sri Lanka. In all these countries, generally, you will see cultivation of the cashew nut orchards on a large scale. And, you will be surprised to know that India ranks first as far as the production of this cashew nut is concerned. Now, India is famous for, or takes first rank, not only in cashew nut, of course, we read, even in red gram production, even in sugarcane production, and of course, even in milk production, what we call white revolution, we could achieve this. So India earns, crores of rupees in terms of foreign exchange by exporting these to West. Of course, the important part of this cashew nut is the nut, what we call. The nut is almost, it is a kidney-shaped structure. A nut, very hard coat will be there. It won't break. And of course, that is, morphologically, taxonomically speaking, it is the true fruit. And we have, fleshy fruit, what we call apple. That is the false fruit. It is the modification of what we say pedicel. So pedicel turns into a fleshy part, and of course, true fruit is our nut. So we are interested in nut, of course, especially in Andhra. People don't care for this apple. So this apple, of course, it is juicy and is not that tasty, and it has not been exploited in East Coast area. But if you go to West Coast, especially in Goa area, now these apples, the fleshy apples, are collected carefully and subjecting them to fermentation. They extract a kind of alcohol and they release that into market in the name Feni. Feni is the alcoholic drink that Goans prepare from the fleshy fruit of this cashew nut. Now, all these countries which we just named are on either side of the equator, where the hot weather and the humid weather is present. And this is the weather conditions that are suitable for raising the cashew nut. Now, so the important is that is 90 or 95% of the revenue we get from the kernels of this cashew nut. Of course, 2 to 3% you get by marketing cashew nut shell liquid, CNSL. So you may get it this under under object 2, CNSL, cashew nut shell liquid. Now this is being used in making varnishes and paints and also as a lubricant, brake liners. This is being used. So now, coming to the high yielding varieties, especially Bapatla Research Station has released more than 6 high yielding varieties of this cashew nut by BPP. BPP means Bapatla. So Bapatla 1, Bapatla 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In this series, they have released high yielding pest resistant varieties and that have the ability to overcome the weather extremes. So now, coming to the soil, generally it comes up well in the loam soils and the sandy, loamy soils. And such soils are present on the coastal areas. So generally it comes up well in the well-drained sandy, loamy soils, and a hard pan should not be there. And generally water table should be below 3 meters or so, because it is a dicotyledonous plant and it sends its tap roots deep into the soil, and from there it attracts or it absorbs its minerals, water, etc. So generally the sandy soils, and generally of course the pH variance will be from 6.5 to 7.5 or so. So above 8 or below 6 is not good for raising these orchards. Of course, if the soils are salty soils or basic soils where the salt concentration is more, such soils are not suitable for raising this cashew nut. Of course, regarding the propagation, generally because it is a cross-pollinated crop. But in cross-pollinated crops, in almost we discussed yesterday, even in mango or even in what we call citrus fruits, generally people go for this vegetatively propagated plants that are available, because they give you fruits which resemble its mother plant in 10% of characteristics. But of course, if the plants are cross-pollinated, generally because of this segregation, a genetical phenomenon, generally you may not get the plants raised from the mother plant through seed. It shows some variance. So if you want to grow plants which are very similar to the mother plant, then you have to go for what we call vegetative propagation. Now, vegetative propagation, generally here a good number of grafting techniques are employed, but of course it is a cumbersome and process, and generally nurseries, meeting the demand of these cashew nuts are not available. So though this graftingly raised plants are good for raising, but because of the shortage and because of costly affair, not available in time. So that's why what farmers do, they raise their crops by selecting the seed or the fruit from resistant varieties, well grown and disease resistant varieties, and they harvest. I told you already, there is an apple, fleshy apple, and at the end of which you find kidney shaped hard nut that is a true fruit. So now the farmer collects fresh seeds. Generally this is the time for the harvest. Generally from the last week of March to last week of May, generally that is the time for the harvest. And after harvesting, he separates these apples from the nuts, and these nuts are selected, and of course farmers dip them in the bucket full of water, and the floating ones are not fit for raising new crop, and the sunken or the heavy ones are selected, and of course they are planted in rows or in a raised, a nursery is raised by planting them. Or some people, to avoid or to reduce the input cost, generally they dig pits at regular intervals. Of course, it's a tree habit, and they dig pits or the trenches which are 6 to 10 feet ahead, apart based on the variety. And generally they put dribbling or putting seeds inside the soil, generally 5 to 6 centimeters deep, and 2 or 3 seeds are put at each point of the hill, and you get 2 or 3, of course, seedlings. And generally after 3 or 4 months, and you pluck out, you remove the unhealthy ones, and you put them where there are gaps as such, or you can take them and you can transplant them into the area which you have already prepared, ready for plantation. So generally, this is raising the new plants by putting or dibbling the seeds. But of course, if it is a vegetative mode, that is grafting technique. Of course, 3-4 important grafting techniques are there. The one is what we call air layering. The other is veneer grafting is there, and side grafting is there. Patch budding is there. Epicotyle grafting. These are the 5 important grafting techniques that are in use as far as the cultivation of cashew nut is concerned. So now, of course, I told you it takes 5 to 6 years when the farmer has to wait for his harvest from the orchard, cashew nut orchard. He has to wait 6 years or so. So generally, agricultural people and scientists advise the farmers who are growing this in the form of gardens or orchards. Generally, people or scientists ask the farmers to grow the short duration pulses or the vegetables in meanwhile. Say, keeping the land and waiting for 6 years, it is not advisable, because our farmers, very poor, and they cannot afford, they cannot wait for 4 or 5 years without any return. So generally, scientists advise, agricultural scientists advise farmers, because the two plants are 6 to 10 feet, 10 meter distant. So this distance can be exploited for raising various pulses, short duration pulses, such as your groundnut, horse gram, or vegetables or chilies, tobacco nurseries, etc. Can be raised so that he gets minimum returns. So now this is about what we call intercropping. Intercropping, of course, this intercultivation is nothing but removing the weeds. Removing the weeds, if it is a virgin soil covered by the bushes, etc. If you want to turn that into an orchard, then of course you have to remove all the bushes, etc. And of course you can keep grass, etc. Because if you denudate or if you remove everything, there is every possibility. If there is a heavy rain, there is every possibility for washing away of the top fertile soil. This what we call erosion, soil erosion. It could be what we call air erosion or water or rain erosion, whatever the case may be. So that's why the grasses can be left, but only bushes, etc. can be cleared. But of course, after plantation, after you have planted, then of course you have to see that no weed is left in the field, because if you keep them, it may lead to what we call infestation by your pests and diseases. So that's why you have to keep your field very, very clean. So now manuring, of course, it differs from plant to plant, variety to variety. Generally, in the first year, generally we give what we call in the first dose 100 kg of nitrogen and 80 kg of potash, of course. And first dose and second dose 50 kg of nitrogen and 40 kg of potash, phosphorus. And of course, second year 50 kg, third year 100 kg, fourth year onwards 100, 125 kgs, like this. So generally these chemical fertilizers, that is NPK, are given in split doses, not at one time. They have to be given at different intervals. So now, as I already told you, generally cropping, generally it takes the cashew nut trees come for flowering after 3 to 5 years of plantation, of course, you get good returns only after 10th year onwards. Now harvesting, I already told you, generally April, from the first week of April, generally in the east coast, and now by the end of May, generally the season ends. Of course, a bit earlier in the west coast, it differs from a variety. And generally these nuts, generally they do not come for a harvest at a time. So they come in flashes. So so you have to wait in these 2 months of harvest or so. So generally 4 to 8 times you need to pick them. So of course these are I already told you, generally in areas, especially in Kerala area, even I told you, in our area, generally labor are employed to collect the fallen apple with the seed. But in Kerala, if it falls, there is every possibility for the damage, or your sand, your dust, etc. gets entangled to the apple, the juicy part. So, but of course, our people don't mind, because we are not interested in this apple. But in Kerala, they do not wait till the fruit falls. So when it is ready for harvest, then they employ labor and they pluck them from the tree itself, so that there is no injury and there is no dust contamination to the apple. Of course, by subjecting it to the apples to fermentation, they make alcohol and market it in the form of what we call an alcoholic drink by name Feni. So now the important, as far as the examination is concerned, processing. Processing is very, very important. What is processing? The processing is not the extraction of the edible kernel. Edible kernel from the hard shell is what we call the processing. Now this processing, in Kerala, Quillan is very famous. Hundreds of processing units are there. Of course, even we have a good number of processing units in Palasa and Srikakulam, and Betapalam and Prakasham and Mori in East Godavari, of course. So these are the areas where the high on the high acreage these plantations are there. There, a number of industries have come, and not only farmers, it provides employment to double the number of farmers, more than that. So if there are 1,000 farmers growing, and indirectly, some more than 1 lakh are benefited in the form of your labor and also in these processing units. Now this processing unit, it involves 6 or 7 stages. Now first one, what we call roasting, and roasting, and the second one, of course, what we call shelling. Third one is drying. Fourth one is peeling, grading, sweating, and the final one is packing. So it goes in a phase-wise manner. And of course, the first one is what we call roasting. The name itself gives you the idea. So roasting is generally the seeds, hard shells or nuts are collected and they are roasted. And this roasting is done. Why roasting? Because the fruit coat and seed coat are closely packed. So unless and until they are roasted, they are dried, you cannot get the kernel out. You cannot get the kernel out. Say, for example, take the example of your groundnut. The fresh ones, if you move them also, you don't get any sound. So if you put them under sunshine for 3-4 days, then the fruit coat and the seed coat, they get separated. So to separate that, the fruit coat and the seed coat, generally they are roasted. And there is roasting. There are 3 important methods of this roasting. One we call open pan method. The other is drum roasting method. Third one is oil bath roasting method. So in Open pan method means here a big pan, iron pan with holes, perforated pan is taken, and on that pan, your material, that hot nuts are spread, and this pan is kept on what we call fire. And when it becomes hot, when the pan becomes hot, it becomes red, and under that red condition, these nuts get roasted, and because of that heat, because of that hotness, whatever the liquid that is there in the shell comes out in the form of drop. It too catches fire. So on this pan, the seed, or what we call the kernel, the fruits or the nuts are kept on that hot pan only for 3 to 5 minutes. And in that, during 5 minutes, they catch fire, and then you have to douse the fire by spreading these hot seeds on the floor. And the second one is what we call a drum roasting method. Here there is a iron drum is there, of course. It too has some perforations, and there are two inlet and outlet will be there. And generally farmer puts the seed from one end, and generally this drum, which is kept in a slant position, not like this, in a slant position, and through one end, the seeds are fed into that drum, and it is rotated by using a handle, and of course at the bottom you have fire, and because of that fire, the drum gets hot, and here also by the time it comes down from one end to the other end, the seed catches fire, and of course then the drum is unlidded, and it is put on the floor, and fire is doused. And in case of this oil bath, CSNL, that is a cashew nut, this liquid, cashew nut shell liquid is there, it oozes out from the hard coat. And here the main purpose of this oil bath roasting is that they see that, so in the two methods, that is in the open pan method and in drum roasting method, the oil is last. It becomes a waste. But here, to minimize the waste, 50% is last, but another 50% is collected, and that will be used for making varnishes and other as a lubricant. So here, oil bath roasting, the temperature, because this oil, when it catches fire, it generates temperature of 190 to 200 degrees. So under such hot condition, 2 or 3 minutes is sufficient for roasting of these seeds. They too catch fire, and then by putting them on the floor, the fire is doused. And of course, you can go for what we call sprinkling of water and do douse. And of course, after keeping them on the floor for a day or so, then the next step will be what we call shelling. Shelling is nothing but breaking the hard coat with a stick. Breaking that hard coat, because they are roasted, our process becomes easy. Once they are roasted, they become brittle, and you can break them easily. But of course, even mechanized breaking is there in Kerala and other areas. If it is manual, generally the ladies are employed, and generally they take the nut and one after the other they go on beating, and that's why the nut gets broken. It comes out in the form of two, and one has the kernel in it, and the other is empty. Like say for example, you take what we call groundnut, and if you press it, if you open it, you will see one has seeds and the other is empty. So is the case with. So if you break them, generally you get two parts, and the third part is what we call after separating. See, the one that is there inside, by using either pin or a wire, you take it out. Then they are dried. And after drying, this. For example, take the example of your groundnuts. You get now nuts. If you roast them, what happens? The pink colored testa, what we call seed coat. So here also the pink color nuts or what we call kernels are covered by the cream colored kernels are covered by a pink colored seed coat, and that needs to be taken out. This removal of this pink colored papery seed coat is what we call peeling. This what we call peeling. Of course, generally women by using pins or wires, they separate that. So while peeling, one should be very, very careful. You know, if you're not careful while peeling, there is every possibility for the breaking. It breaks into two halves. If sometimes, you know, they break again. So broken ones do not give you good price. So that's why generally people are trained, women are trained for doing this breaking, peeling, and then comes what we call grading. So after peeling, then they go for grading. You know, grading is nothing but full ones, half broken ones, and further broken ones. So based on that, they are separated, graded. Then they final will be packing. But of course, before doing packing, see, because we have you know dried, peeling, grading in this, by that time, you know, they become the kernel becomes a bit brittle. There is a very possibility for the breakage. To avoid the breakage before packing, then one more process, what we call sweating. Sweating is nothing but, see, the peeled ones. The peeled, graded, your kernels are put in a chamber or in a place where the humidity is there. Humidity. So this, they take this moisture or humid, and because of that, you know, they lose their brittleness. So that is the time. So when they are rather lose their brittleness, then they are subjected to packing. So here in packing, generally, you know, they do use what we call Vita pack method of packing, where the kernels, graded kernels, are put in vacuumized tins where oxygen is removed and only carbon dioxide is there. So in the presence of carbon dioxide, they can be stored longer. So this is the processing. Processing very, very important for you as far as exam is concerned. So now, of course, coming to the pests, you know, of course, when compared to other orchards or other gardens, plantation crops, the pest menace is a bit less. So generally, we find what we call stem borer and root borers are there. Of course, this leaf and blossom webber is there, leaf miner is there, and apple nut borer is there. So these are some pests that are found common in the cashew nut growing areas. Now this is about the cashew nut. Of course, then we move to the last one, that is coconut. So coconut, you know, very each one of are familiar with this coconut, and you know, coconut is otherwise known as kalpa vruksha. You know, according to Hindu mythology, this you know, Kamadhenu and Kalpavruksha. Kamadhenu and Kalpavruksha. And of course, this, why it is known as Kalpavruksha, means every part of the coconut is used in some form or the other. Your trunk, your roots, your you know, leaves, leaf bases, and you know, leaves, you know, you have the leaf midrib, and fruits, of course, either in the form of tender ones or matured ones. If it's a mature, you get what we call fruit wall, that is nothing but epicarp, a fibrous one that can be used. There's a big industry which runs on this fiber, what we call coir industry. Kerala is very famous for coir industry. where you find these plantations on a large scale. So each and every part, even you get a bunch of your nuts, coconuts, and those spades, what we call spades and other ones can be used as a firewood. So even the endocarp, what we call endocarp, the stony part. If you break coconut, that hard part you find, that hard part is nothing but what we call endocarp. Epicarp, mesocarp, endocarp. So mesocarp is your fiber, endocarp is your stony part, and of course your copra and the liquid is nothing but your endosperm. So this endocarp, which is stony, that is also used. So a kind of coal you get that is used in medicine, Ayurvedic medicine. Of course, the oil that comes also used, and this it can be used even for getting fire also. And this coir, multiple uses. You can make ropes, you can make mattresses, and these fine fibers can be used for filling your beds, your cushions, sofas, etc. So multiple purposes. So that's why each and of course, a kind of toddy in some areas, a kind of toddy is also extracted from this. So each and every part, now there is no occasion. There is no occasion, especially festive occasions. It could be your marriage and any festival, on any festival, generally you see the decorations. For decoration, generally we use this coconut leaves for pandal making, for many purposes, multiple purposes. And of course, coming to your copra, that is endosperm. And of course, if it is a tender coconut, of course, full of water, very rich in minerals, nutrients, very good for people who are in hospitals for quick recovery. So it's a good drink, healthy drink as such, a healthy drink. Of course, your coconut or copra, if it is fleshy one, of course, you can use many culinaries, making foods. If it is a dried one, that is used for the extraction of coconut oil. Coconut oil, if you go to Kerala, where it is used as a cooking oil, coconut oil. So like this, multi-purposes. Of course, the oil, used for making hair oils, even your toilet soaps. So multi-purposes. So as each and every part of the coconut, even the byproducts of this coconut are used for multiple purposes. That's why naming the plant as Kalparuksha is quite justified. Okay, now coming to this, generally this originated in Indo-Malayan region. Indo-Malayan region is considered as the place of origin of this coconut. Of course, now coconut generally, like your cashew nut, generally it prefers the coastal areas where hot and humid weather prevails. So hot and humid weather is quite congenial for raising this. And such conditions are present in what we call, Indonesia, Philippines, India, Thailand, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Fiji, West Indies, West Africa. So these are some of the leading countries where you find coconut growing on a larger acreage. Now in India, of course, east and west coast. Again, east and west coast, of course, east coast starting from your Bengal up to what we call our Nellore, this, and of course here starting from west coast, starting from Kerala, Karnataka, Maharashtra, your Goa and ultimately Gujarat, where the coconut is grown on larger areas. Now, in examination, they'll ask you to differentiate between tall and dwarf varieties. See, generally in coconut, we have two varieties. Some are tall based on their morphology, how a plant looks. So some are very tall and the other are very dwarf, tall ones and dwarf ones. Tall, when I say tall, they are 30 meters high, 30-meter high, and they live for more than 80 years. And of course, number of nuts they produce in a year ranges from 60 to 80. And of course, the oil content of the copra or endosperm will be around 72%. And these long, tall varieties, they come for maturity after 6 or 8 years of their plantation. And this oil, coconut oil nowadays, apart from your hair oil, it has some antibacterial, antibiotic properties. This is also used. And of course, some people also do what we call oil pulling. So very good. Coconut oil is healthy oil. So now coming to the dwarf ones, short ones, generally they are 5 meter high, short ones. Well, ladder is sufficient. But if it is a long one, you and me cannot climb. Only there are few experts who can climb and harvest the nuts. So while the 5 meter ones, very small, of course, a small ladder is sufficient. Anybody can make harvest from the short ones. Of course, they live for 40 to 45 years. Of course, from each one, you get 60 to 70 nuts. And of course, the tall ones go for cross-pollination, whereas these dwarf ones, say dwarf ones are mostly hybrids. And generally, they are, you find almost equal number of, cross and self-pollinated flowers will be there. And maturity, it comes for maturity 3 to 5 years of plantation. And generally, your tall ones are grown for oil, whereas your dwarf ones, short ones are grown for their water, that is coconut water. The coconuts. Now this is the season, you and me run for coconut water. And of course, in these dwarf ones, of course, tall ones, there are various names, West Coast tall, East Coast tall, and Lakshadweep tall. Based on their location, based on few exclusive characteristics they possess, they have been named on the place where they are commonly found. So West Coast tall on the west coast of India, and East Coast tall, of course, and the coast of your Bay of Bengal, of course, Lakshadweep, an island where you find this Lakshadweep tall. And these dwarf ones, dwarf ones are again two. Of course, one is what we call Chowghat dwarf and Ganga Bond. Chowghat dwarf, generally, this is found in West Coast, and Ganga Bondam is mostly East Coast, especially in Andhra area, coastal Andhra. Now this Chowghat dwarf, which is mostly found in West Coast, and in this you have two more varieties. One is what we call Chowghat dwarf orange. Now this, if you go to any on the roadside vendors, you will see the tender coconuts. Some are orange in color, the other are green in color. So based on the color they exhibit, they are the Chowghat dwarfs are of two types. One is orange dwarf and the other is green dwarf. And of course, we have Bangalore Bondam, very big one. And they, from each Bondam you get around 700 to 1 liter, 100 ml, 1000 ml, what we call the coconut water, nutritious coconut water. Now Ganga Bondam, a semi-tall variety, especially found in Andhra coast, and generally the seeds are of, the fruits are of medium size, and generally it bears the fruits irregularly. But of course, from each year, in each year, you see around 60 to 70 nuts per tree. So now the raising, of course, the soils, I told you, well-drained tropical soils, especially sandy, red loam and laterite soils are very good for this coconut orchards. And generally, the pH range from 7 to 8. Generally, basic pH they prefer. If it's acidic pH, generally they do not come. So that's why generally it becomes very difficult if you want to raise in a black cotton soils. Generally, they're a little bit acidic. So that's why they do not come up. Trees do not come up. So generally, of course, the propagation, generally propagation only by seed. Seed means here the coconut itself, the entire coconut is put in on the soil. Of course, it is given water, or in some cases, you make a basket or a nursery where you use what we call the straw or the husk or this coconut fiber, etc., because they have water retaining. So it needs in a cool weather. So under cool conditions, sufficient moisture is there, then your coconut, what we call the drupe, it sprouts and you get a seedling. So generally, people are advised, farmers are advised to take these fruits from the matured trees which are of 25 to 60 years old. They give you good quality, nuts, which can be used for raising your seedlings or young ones. So generally, for their plantation, of course, if it is a nursery, you raise that. There are a good number of nurseries are available. And before you plant, you have to, in advance, prepare your pits. Now, these the plantation is done either in the form of a square, or in some areas in the form of a triangular mode. Now, distance will be 6 to 8 meters, of course, because here you don't have, because it is a unbranched trunk will be there. But after it's on the top, you see these leaves spreading. Each leaf will be 3 to 4, 5 meters. So that's why they are put 6 to 8 meters away from each other, these pits. And these pits are, of course, they are fumigated or into the soil, generally BSC powder or chlorpyrifos, etc. are added. And even into that pit, format manure is added. And of course, the silt brought from, tanks can be used, or red soil can be used, or even what we call the husk, etc. The dust obtained from this coir industry can also use for filling these, pits. Bone meal can also be added. Format, bone meal, etc. are added. And so these pits are prepared in advance. And these pits are kept open for 3 to 4 months before you take up this plantation. So, now generally the pits, 1 into 1, that is 1 meter, breadth and length, and 1 meter deep. Such pits are dug and they are filled, of course, disinfected, and then you go for plantation. General, of course, here also, because it takes, based on, even if it is a dwarf one, even it comes for, flowering and fruiting after 3 to 4 years only. If it is a tall one, of course, 6 to 7 years or so. So here also, similar to your cashew nut, here the farmers are advised not to wait, till he gets his prime crop. He has to wait 6 to 7 years. So meanwhile, instead of wasting the soil, he can take up the pulses. The short duration pulses can be grown, or short duration your vegetables can be grown, or in some cases you can grow what we call these green matter, the crotalaria, like fast growing, Illipesera, etc. You can grow and you incorporate into the soil. Thereby you can add to the fertility of the soil. And here, generally the water is to be given these coconuts. So that's why here you see around each trunk, generally they make basins. They make clear basins so that where water remains there for a few minutes or so. And because, this is a monocotyledonous plant, and you see these fibrous roots forming a kind of network. So that's why generally farmers are not advised to go for what we call inter-cultivation by using what we call plows, etc. Because it is a fibrous root system, it spreads horizontal. So one should be very careful while doing weeding, taking out the weeds, etc., and also while digging, basins for watering, etc. One has to take a little bit care. So around each palm, generally basin with a radius of 2 meters. 2 meters radius. Because why 2 meters here? Because I told you fibrous root system, it spreads 1 meter one side and the other. So that's why in all 2 meter in the 2 meter circumference we make a basin so that you can give timely water for the plant. So because when it is in flowering and fruiting, the plant should not suffer from deficiency of water. So that's why in order to keep sufficient moisture in these basins, some dried coconuts husk will be there, and even a straw, etc., will be kept and watered so that it supplies water, moisture to the plant. So now, but of course, I already told you intercropping, wherein you can take up tapioca, banana, and millets, pulses, etc. You can take up, because here the plant grows very tall. In other cases, generally people are, even if it is a what we call citrus fruits, then generally we learned in our yesterday's lecture where people are not advised to grow lengthy, either maize, sorghum, or sugarcane, which grow tall, and there is every possibility, they not only compete for moisture and minerals, but also they put shade on the tree. So that, but here, because it's a very tall one, that doesn't matter. Even if you grow millets also here, you can grow for millets, cultivation of millets and pulses as a intercropping. So now this generally pests are very few. Of course, it suffers from what we call rhinoceros beetle or black-headed caterpillar is there, red palm weevil is there. Of course, diseases are bud rot is there. Of course, trunk rot, root rot, and stem bleeding. These are some of the, and the Tatipaka disease. These are some of the diseases and pests that are common in all the coconut growing areas. So as far as the exam is concerned, you have to remember, you should learn to put your answer for the differentiation between a tall and dwarf, and the other will be why your coconut is called as a kalpa vruksha. Sometimes they may ask you, mention the common pests and diseases on the coconut orchard, and they may ask you, uh, regarding intercropping, etc., and the suitable soils and climatic conditions for raising this. So these are some of the probable questions. So describe the tall varieties and describe the dwarf varieties will be there, and of course distinguish between the tall and dwarf varieties, and what are the soil requirements, etc., and the climatic requirements of this one, and the final one could be what we call why this is called as a kalpa vruksha, or economic importance of your coconut, important products you get from coconut. So these are some of the probable questions on the coconut. So this is about our elective paper, and of course, I think we have covered the syllabus. I feel, I hope I have covered this in a satisfactory way because of extra classes that we got in our second series. And before I conclude, before I close my lecture, I would like to ask you, so if you have any doubt in today's lecture or the topics that we have so far covered, you can raise your doubt, and I'll try my level best to answer your queries. Okay, now this is the time for our interaction. Any doubt, any query? If there is no query or no doubt from your side, now let me conclude my lecture, and wish you all the best in the forthcoming examination. Say, as far as this elective is concerned, don't get scared. This is an elective, and you need little bit common sense to answer the questions, because they are of general type. They are of general type, but as far as your core subject is concerned, it is subject oriented. You cannot rather write unnecessary things there, but here you can add even certain general things can be added in our answers as far as this elective is concerned, because people coming from agricultural background, or people coming from rural background and villages, I hope they can answer with confidence this elective paper. So the final advice will be, look at the previous papers and look for the questions which are generally getting repeated each time, and you select such questions and prepare your, and because you have good choices there for you, both in short notes and your essay type, and even in your objective. Of course, no choice is there, but generally I hope you will answer this paper with all confidence. So wishing you all the best, and let us see in the next semester. So thank you, and I would conclude my today's lecture with this. Wishing you all the best in the forthcoming examination. Thank you.